How difficult is the son of an old mischievous child? Introduction. Zhou Niantong has traveled through time and time to some unlucky guy with the same name. With unbearable hardships, Zhou Niantong can only rely on himself to escape from that deadly situation first. As the son of an old mischievous child, do you know how difficult he is? Chapter 1. Zhou Niantong's Journey Through Time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. During the Southern Song dynasty, the southwestern region of the Central Plains belonged to the Kingdom of Dali and maintained good relations with the Kingdom of Song for generations. On a winter night in a bedroom, candles were lit inside, casting a hazy warm light. The room is not big, but the decoration is quite luxurious and luxurious. A practical item can be labeled as unauthorized in ordinary households. On a fragrant couch, a beautiful woman of 18 or 19 years old was sitting there, with delicate silk covering her lower body and a silk handkerchief embroidered with mandarin ducks playing in the water tied to her forehead. Her jade face was slightly white, and she was sweating profusely, carrying the fatigue of childbirth. At this moment, the woman was showing tenderness on her face, gently patting the back of the sleeping baby while softly humming, Niantong. My good child. Next to her, a thin and weak maid was frantically packing up the tools for childbirth, occasionally turning her head and carefully checking the condition of the woman and the baby. The camera zooms in, exits the bedroom, front hall, lobby, and out the door. You can see that it is actually a small part of a palace, with carved railings and jade masonry, carrying the royal elegance. On the top of the palace, there was a figure standing at this moment. When the camera zoomed in, one could see a middle-aged man with a handsome face and a calm demeanor. Although wearing regular clothes, he carried a dignified and noble aura, indicating that he must have a very high status. At this moment, this person had a pale face, a stiff expression, and an incredulous expression. He murmured, Empressing. Empressing has a child. Is it his? The night was like water, and at some point the sky began to snow heavily. The snowflakes covered the person, but he remained motionless, standing there like a sculpture, exuding immense sadness and despair. Snowflakes fluttering. The north wind is howling, and the sky and earth are vast. This baby has a name since birth, his name is Zhou Niantong. Coincidentally, his previous life was also known as Zhou Niantong. He was a prospective college student in the 21st century and had just received an admission letter from a prestigious university. On the way to buy vinegar at my mother's request, I fell into a big hole and woke up to be reborn. Isn't it his fault? Who knows how many times a hole can appear on a large road that has been walked on a weekday? And this hole, it has no bottom. I don't know what kind of plane the municipal department is using. If you dig holes on the road and don't even give warning signs, it's okay. What does it mean to dig holes without leaving a bottom? During the process of falling straight down, Zhou Niantong went through psychological journeys such as fear, calmness, indifference, and drowsiness until finally falling asleep. Zzz in a hazy state, Zhou Niantong only felt waves of compression on his body. Initially, it wasn't strong enough, but the pressure grew stronger and stronger, as if a force was about to push him away. At the same time, there seemed to be waves of painful moans coming from the ears, but the buzzing could not be heard clearly. What's all the noise in the middle of the night? Can we still get a good night's sleep? Zhou Niantong wanted to turn over and wave his hand to stop the other party from making noise, but his whole body seemed to be tightly bound by the squeezing force. Not to mention waving his hand, his legs and feet couldn't move, and in the end, he only managed to make his body twist slightly. It was this twist that seemed to complement the pushing force, accompanied by a painful cry from somewhere. Zhou Niantong's body involuntarily pushed out, feeling completely bound. Unfortunately, I haven't enjoyed the feeling of freedom and relaxation yet. The first feeling that the outside world conveys to Zhou Niantong is that it's cold. It was like jumping naked into a hole in the ice and swimming in winter for 3 or 9 days, and Zhou Niantong kept stirring up several times, shaking his body like a sieve of bran. Not only that, but the things under his body seemed to be very soft bedding and the like, but Zhou Niantong only felt a tingling sensation on his skin, which made him feel flustered. He couldn't help but take a deep breath of cold air, which rushed directly into his mouth and went down his trachea. Suddenly, his body felt a piercing cold pain from inside out, which was extremely uncomfortable. If I had known earlier, it would have been better not to wriggle a bit earlier. Although the place where I stayed before was a bit uncomfortable, it was at least warm enough, so that even taking a breath didn't feel like drinking sulfuric acid. Zhou Niantong's mind was lost in thought. Open your mouth and want to let out a few moans, only to find out that the sound coming out of your mouth is actually the cry of a baby. Zhou Niantong was confused and felt his body light, as if he had been gently lifted up by a pair of hands, and then entered a soft and warm embrace. A gentle female voice also came to his ears, as if whispering to him. Unfortunately, there was a buzzing sound in his ears at this moment, and he couldn't hear what the female voice was saying. Zhou Niantong felt as if his eyelids were firmly glued together, and he had to work hard to open a small slit. The light coming in from the crack was not very strong, it could be said to be very soft, but it still made his eyes ache, as if his eyes were so fragile that they couldn't bear any light, couldn't stop crying, and could only close them again. However, even if you keep your eyes open, it probably won't be of much use. The image I just scanned through my eyelids was hazy, and I could only barely distinguish large irregular objects, with no visible colors. Not only that, from the cold environment just now to the warmth at this moment, Zhou Niantong felt a wave of fatigue coming from relaxation. His already not very clear mind became even more drowsy, and he fell asleep unconsciously, leaving only the last hint of doubt. What's wrong with me? It has been over 2 months since Zhou Niantong finally figured out what happened to him. He has traveled. As a newborn baby with immature organ development, he falls into deep sleep for most of the day, and the only waking time makes it difficult for him to obtain sufficient and effective information through observing the environment. Fortunately, as his body gradually grew and developed, Zhou Niantong finally recovered from his dysregulated state of 5 senses. Yesterday, he could finally distinguish that it should be his newborn mother's call to him. Is the current name pronounced correctly? I can't believe that the name hasn't changed since being reborn. That's right, it's not China Unicom, it's not copper smelting, and it's not some kind of taboo vocabulary that makes people feel uneasy, but the 2 words, Niantong, that are upright and upright. Speaking of his past life, Zhou Niantong once held a grudge against his own name. On the day of his birth, he happened to be playing a classic game with his parents to clear the level. Accompanied by the cheers of "finally cleared, this memory is clear," were the moans of prenatal pain, so the name Zhou Niantong accompanied him for nearly 20 years, protesting and complaining that it was invalid. He also questioned why his sister could call him the ordinary name Zhou Chang. However, his father's answer to him was that if he really envied a 2-character name, he could remove the word Niantong. Zhou Tong. Little Overlord Zhou Tong. That's not as good as this one now. At that time, he poured in a whole bottle of cola in one breath to suppress his full of sadness and anger. Zhou Niantong struggled to open his eyes. Although everything in front of him was still somewhat hazy, he could already see the rough shape of things and distinguish colors. Most importantly, the soreness in his eyes had also decreased significantly, and he could finally open his eyes for a longer time. Curiously looking around, the place of residence seemed to be quite prosperous, with a lot of silk and satin in the bedroom, but the furniture and other designs were somewhat retro. Looking at it with a head of several years, what I was lying on was actually a carved large bed. It was antique and I don't know what kind of wood it was, but it didn't look cheap. I can't see anything else. After all, what a baby under 3 months old can do is barely turn their head, move their arms, kick their legs, and turn over, which is just a luxury. At this moment, there was only a "ah" sound, and a small head poked in from the door. Zhou Niantong, lying in bed, was seen with his eyes wide open and his eyes rolling incessantly. He immediately walked into the room happily. Zhou Niantong glanced at the corner of his eyes and immediately took a deep breath. The person who came was a 13 or 14-year-old cardamom girl, with a slender figure, big eyes, and a beautiful face. Strangely, she was wearing a high-waisted pleated skirt in goose yellow, a light green emerald cloud shirt, and a double bun, dressed in ancient costume. Gu Zhuang, she's still so small. Oh my goodness, don't tell me she's my mother. This is a crime. It is obvious that Zhou Niantong was worried too much. The main reason for looking for Shuyuan on www.zhaoshuyuan.com was that this guy didn't understand the hairstyle of girls who didn't leave the court in ancient times. I saw the young girl lying by the bed with a smile on her face, stretching out her soft fingers and gently caressing Zhou Niantong's face. Young master, wake up. Do you want to find the empress? Sigh. Zhou Niantong breathed a sigh of relief, because although the little girl's voice was sweet, crisp, and pleasant, it was still different from the gentle female voice he had always heard during this period. You think she's a maid? Anyway, indicating closeness is accurate. So Zhou Niantong began to work hard to mobilize his facial muscles and made an effort to make a pleasing smile. Although Zhou Niantong's expression may be quite stiff at this moment, the smile on the baby's face is undoubtedly very cute, because the girl's eyes instantly showed countless small hearts, and with surprise, she leaned her cherry lips towards Zhou Niantong. Ah! What are you doing? While Zhou Niantong was struggling to resist, a gentle female voice came from outside the door. Huaner, has Niantong woken up? The main leader is here. Upon hearing the familiar sound, Zhou Niantong immediately knew that this was the true arrival of his mother. He immediately tried to turn his head and look over. I saw a graceful and elegant woman walking towards me, with a gentle smile and a beautiful appearance. Although it was still a bit blurry in Zhou Niantong's eyes, it carried a hazy beauty that definitely matched the demeanor of a virtuous wife and mother. The woman reached out and picked up Zhou Niantong, gently patting his back and humming softly. Zhou Niantong comfortably stretched lazily in the woman's arms. No mistake, this voice, this smell, it's because his mother didn't run away. Zhou Niantong, who was relieved, expressed satisfaction. His mother is very beautiful, and it seems that he can have expectations for his future appearance. Chapter 2. The shortest time traveler in history. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. So, Zhou Niantong began to enjoy a life where everything was taken care of like a real baby. Although his limited mobility was actually quite boring, fortunately he slept for a long time. He didn't wake up much in a day, and it wasn't difficult to pass the time of eating and sleeping. Speaking of which, some gentlemen may be concerned about the scene of Zhou Niantong, who has a baby's body and an adult man's psychology, while breastfeeding, is it with self-blame, hesitation, and shyness on one hand, and anticipation waiting to appreciate the beautiful scenery on the other, and then how to sink into it again. I have to tell the gentleman, you've thought too much. After all, he had eaten it for over 2 months before, and it was difficult for him to open his eyes at that time. Even if he did, he would still be blind. He couldn't see anything clearly in front of him, and he couldn't even distinguish colors. He still admired ghosts. After all, the 5 senses are not sound, and only the feeling of hunger is the most real, so we can only rely on instinct to suck desperately. As for now, I can barely see it clearly. Zhou Niantong said that as the saying goes, habit becomes nature, and Pavlov's theory of conditioned reflex is extremely correct. So, all of Zhou Niantong's reactions are as usual, there is no difference whether they can be seen clearly or not. No difference. That's right, he said it. Just after Zhou Niantong accepted the fact of his travels, more than 3 months later, his mother accidentally said a sentence that made Zhou Niantong, who had just turned half a year old, start to doubt life. That night, his barely able to sit up on his own against the bedding brought his mother a great surprise, and then he hugged him and kissed him repeatedly, murmuring to himself. Niantong's good child. Grow up quickly. Once you grow up, my mother can take you out of this palace. Let's go find your father. What, I actually live in the palace myself. What, my mother is actually a woman in the palace. What, my dad is actually from outside the palace. Suddenly, the palace fighting scenes of 40 or 50 episodes accompanied by grudges and intrigues began to stir up in Zhou Niantong's mind. However, before he could guess his ugly figure, the next self-talk from the old lady left him stunned. Zhou Niantong, you heartless old rascal, just left us two women like this. I don't know where we went. Do you know that our children are so old? I'll strangle it. Zhou Niantong, old rascal. If I can't guess my own and my mother's identities, Zhou Niantong's complete collection of the complete works of Jin Yong from his previous life would be considered a waste of money. Zhou Niantong, an important figure in Jin Yong's masterpieces, The Legend of the Condor Heroes and The Legend of the Condor Heroes, is undoubtedly familiar to every fan of Jin Yong. Zhou Niantong's father in his past life greatly appreciated the character of the mischievous old boy. He said that it is not easy for a person to maintain a childlike heart and bring happiness to others as they age. Dad is very envious of him. But after being reborn through time travel, I will think about it in my own identity. Pooh, scumbag. There's no way, the old mischievous child has done such an disgraceful thing in his lifetime. After the first Huashan swordsmanship debate, Wang Chongyang, the god of the gods, brought Zhou Niantong to Dali. The old mischievous boy wandered around the palace of Dali and met Yinggu, the favored concubine of the southern emperor. The two of them had originally just been playfully teaching some acupoint-pointing martial arts, but somehow they got along. They were still pregnant and gave the southern emperor a green hat. The southern emperor's demeanor is truly extraordinary. As an emperor, he lightly let go of this matter and even proposed to help the old mischievous child and Yinggu. But at this moment, the old mischievous child knew he had made a mistake and wanted to make amends by refusing to be with Yinggu. He even returned the brocade handkerchief as a token of love to Yinggu. The result left all three parties feeling dejected. Zhou Niantong had been hiding for decades, while Yinggu lived in the palace with unclear identity and gave birth to a son. The southern emperor suffered the most, as his beloved woman gave birth to someone else's child. Attention, the key point has arrived. My mother is Yinggu, and Zhou Niantong is the unlucky child. Saying he's unlucky is not just because of his awkward identity, but more importantly, he died young. She died young. Speaking of the leader of the Iron Palm gang, Iron Palm floats on the water, Qiu Qianren wanted to secretly eliminate his competitors in order to win the second Huashan swordsmanship competition, which set his sights on the southern emperor. He was also cunning, knowing that with true talent and practical learning, he couldn't resist the southern emperor, so he had the idea of assassinating the people around him. As a result, this goal inexplicably fell on Zhou Niantong, who was still a delicate child and ate 2 iron fists in a row. Afterwards, Yinggu begged the southern emperor Duan Zhixing to save her child. Although the southern emperor was compassionate, he still harbored a deep hatred towards the two people who had brought him green hats. In addition, he was worried that his martial arts would be lost after saving him, and he would not be able to make up his mind for the second Huashan swordsmanship debate. In despair, Yinggu, who had turned white all night, stabbed a dagger into her own flesh and blood's heart. This is a great tragedy in The Legend of the Condor Heroes. Readers may just shake their heads and sigh, but for Zhou Niantong, it's different. This is a terrible thing. Is Zhou going to become the shortest-lived traveler in history? In Zhou Niantong's eyes, it seemed as if a black lasso was being pulled towards him at this moment. Behind him was a demon holding a lasso, with Jie sneering. He saw that the lasso was about to strangle his neck and tighten so tightly. No, our new life has just begun, how could we just hang up like this? Zhou Niantong's face turned pale, his eyes lifeless, and he muttered words that he couldn't even understand. He was only half a year old and hadn't learned to speak yet. Yinggu murmured to herself for a while, and as it was getting late, she picked up her son and comforted him to sleep. Lying in the arms of his mother, listening to her gentle voice singing nursery rhymes, Zhou Niantong felt a blur on his back, and his eyes became hazy. Sleep. Sleep. My dear baby. In the hazy mist, the beautiful smiling face of the old lady, full of love, seemed to have changed slightly. Although it was still a smile at the corner of her mouth, tears flickered in her eyes, and her eyebrows furrowed slightly, exuding a poignant feeling of despair and pain. Hey, Mom, what's wrong with you? Who bullied you? Tell me, when I grow up, I'll settle accounts with him. Sleep, sleep, child, you will never wake up. Oh, why has the nursery rhyme changed? Still carrying tremolo. My dear, if you fall asleep, you won't feel any pain and won't suffer at all. Strange thing, is it because my eyes are blurred? How could I see the green hair on my mother's temples slowly turning into white hair? Are you joking? I'm in the prime of my youth and beauty, how could my hair turn white? Zhou Niantong was a bit surprised in his confusion, but he saw the old lady in front of him bite her silver teeth and look sharp. He took out a shiny dagger from somewhere and stabbed it into his heart. Wow, Zhou Niantong suddenly woke up, feeling palpitations and sweats all over his body, and in an instant, a layer of wetness on his body. Opening her eyes, she saw the surprised expression on her face, and Zhou Niantong knew that she had just had a nightmare. But reason could not control instinct, and he still couldn't help but burst into tears. My child is good, look for the book Garden www.zhaosuiyuan.com. What's going on? Yinggu was frantic, constantly comforting the baby in her arms, but to no avail. She saw the child's face turn pale, trembling all over, crying until she was exhausted, almost suffocating, and her body twitching repeatedly. She is also a person who knows martial arts. She knows some medical skills, but she can't detect any abnormalities when she checks her pulse, so she is extremely anxious. Helplessly, disregarding his own identity and embarrassment, he rushed out of the palace with his child in his arms and searched for a long time in the palace. Only then did he find a knight on duty imperial physician and pleaded for a while. The physician also softened his heart and took action to treat Zhou Niantong. Although Dr. Ren had superb medical skills, he couldn't see any hidden ailments on Zhou Niantong's body. He only noticed that the child had palpitations, shortness of breath, and a cold sweat, looking greatly frightened. Scared. With a bewildered expression on her face, Yinggu thanked the imperial physician and slowly walked back to her own dormitory. She watched as the child in her arms, although in much better condition, still had an unpleasant complexion, rapid breathing, and occasional sobs, which made her feel heartbroken. She suddenly remembered the saying from an elderly family member when she was a child that children with weak yang energy were prone to encountering dirty things. She was immediately aroused and hugged Zhou Niantong, kneeling in place and kowtowing several heads in all directions. Elves and monsters, cows, ghosts, and snakes, my child is young and delicate, unable to withstand turmoil. If you want to harm me, come and harm me. Please, Lady Luing. Zhou Niantong was held in Yinggu's arms, watching his mother's busy and haggard face due to his restlessness, with a hint of guilt flashing in his eyes. Seeing my mother kneeling devoutly in prayer despite the dirt on the ground, I was moved to hear the somewhat childish but sincere prayer and shouted in my heart. No, I must live on. For myself and for my mother, I won't let that scene happen no matter what I say. Chapter 3. A Baby's Difficulty in Self-Help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. The next day, Zhou Niantong woke up very early and took his mother to wash up. He sat alone on the bed, frowning and starting to think. It seems that the original work of The Legend of the Condor Heroes did not elaborate on when the deadly two palms would arrive. If it were to last for about 3 years or 2 in short. It could happen any time. Time is running out, dear. Zhou Niantong began practicing crawling on the bed. After all, with almost complete development, it is necessary to exercise more and have the ability to take action early in order to implement those self-rescue measures. Of course, we are currently taking the opportunity to implement self-help plan number 1, whose core idea is to enhance our defense capabilities. That's right, Zhou Niantong crawled back and forth on the bed, stuffing anything he touched into his collar, and stuffing his back if he couldn't fit it in his chest. Pillow scarves, bed sheets, my own small clothes, my mother's underwear, a handkerchief made belly pocket. Whatever you catch and stuff, we are not picky. Wait, it seems like something strange has mixed in. Zhou Niantong looked disgusted and pulled out the belly bag made of brocade handkerchief, throwing it aside. The brocade handkerchief is embroidered with 2 mandarin ducks, vivid and also embroidered with a poem, which is the famous For Zhangji. He certainly knew that this was the token of love between his father Zhou Batong and his mother, and he made his own belly bag for her. In the original work, when I was injured, I was originally begged by my mother that the Southern Emperor would start to rescue me. It was because I saw this thing that I became jealous and refused to save me again, which caused me to die. With this lesson, Zhou Niantong said nothing would let this thing get on him. Quickly, Zhou Niantong gained weight like a puffed ball, and the feeling of bulging on his body made him feel extremely fulfilled, as if symbols of defense +1 appeared one after another on his head. Strengthen defense on the chest and back, so you won't be beaten to death, will you? Zhou Niantong doesn't expect too much either. As long as the injury is not severe enough to be fatal, I don't have to despair and won't personally stab that knife even if I can only stay in bed for the rest of my life. It's better than dying in the hands of an old lady, right? In no time, apart from a silk quilt, everything else on the bed was stuffed into Zhou Niantong's clothes. My mother Yinggu was originally very happy to cheer for Zhou Niantong's crawling. Now, seeing his strange behavior, she was surprised and opened her mouth, then pointed at him and laughed. There was no other reason, and at this moment, Zhou Niantong's small body was propped up into a ball, swaying and unable to move. Yinggu gently pushed Zhou Niantong's small head, and he couldn't sit still. He rolled from one end of the bed to the other, clumsily waving his hands and feet like a flipped turtle, panting heavily and dancing but unable to turn over. Cluck! The old lady laughed wildly, and to be honest, the scene was very beautiful. Zhou Niantong. Do you consider yourself a colorful dress for entertainment? We can also be considered characters like the 24 filial pieties, right? While daydreaming, my mother Yinggu had already begun to take action, removing all the defenses on Zhou Niantong's body one by one. Wait, Mom. The defense I finally added to my body. Defense point 1.1.1. Zhou Niantong was so anxious that he was sweating profusely and screaming uncontrollably. Unfortunately, his struggle was powerless in the hands of the old lady, and in no time, he was stripped of his original single clothes. As Yinggu started, she nagged, although it's interesting, you can't always wrap yourself around it. It's so hot today, you'll get sick. Zhou Niantong. No wonder I feel flustered, short of breath, and sweating profusely, almost getting heatstroke. The first self-rescue plan came to an end without any progress. It's also a bit naive to just put on a few layers of clothing and try to save your life under the iron palm of old Chiu. Zhou Niantong suddenly felt as if the lasso on his head had dropped a little more that night. The sound of a baby crying was heard far away in the darkness. Without him, Zhou Niantong had another nightmare. The desire to survive can make people stronger, which is Zhou Niantong's recent reflection. These days, he has started to like being held by his mother Yinggu, and as soon as he gets his hands on her, he keeps pointing at the door and shouting, non-stop. Get out. Get out of here. That's right, Zhou Niantong, who has regained his composure, has started the self-help plan No. 2, with the aim of not being able to provoke me and avoiding it. Upon careful consideration, why did Qiu Qianren slap himself with those two palms? Because he hoped to force the southern emperor Duan Zhixing to use a young finger to treat his injuries by seriously injuring himself, thereby causing Duan Zhixing to lose all his martial arts skills and giving him an opportunity to take advantage of it. The reason why Qiu Qianren thinks so is that he and his mother live in the Dali palace, and he is regarded as the prince of the southern emperor. My son was seriously injured, of course he was saved, right? So, if he can leave the palace, don't let anyone misunderstand his relationship with the southern emperor. Can Qiu Qianren still take the wrong medicine and have a headache when he's idle, and come all the way to slap him? Well, the organization is very clear and deserves praise. Undoubtedly, the brain of a baby who has grown and developed over half a year old rotates much faster than before. It only took half a month to figure this out. Zhou Niantong's tearful eyes. I'm too difficult. Unfortunately, the plan is very good, making it difficult to implement. My mother Yinggu is willing to take Zhou Niantong to the yard to bask in the sun, but that's all for it. Zhou Niantong wanted to ask to go out again, but Yinggu refused. Niantong obediently, it's not easy for us to go out. Mom and you are in an awkward position now. It's bad to see people in the palace when we go out. What if we encounter the emperor? Then. What should we do? Zhou Niantong. What should I do? It's too difficult for a baby. He really wished he could tell Yinggu everything directly, and at the very least, he had to express his desire to move out of the palace clearly when looking for the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Unfortunately, the vocal cords of babies over half a year old are still not fully developed, and no matter how hard they try, they can only produce a quirky and incomprehensible tone, let alone expect the mother to understand. It's so difficult for me. That night, as usual, it was crying in the middle of the night. The next day, a piece of paper was pasted outside Yinggu's dormitory, which read, Emperor, Emperor, I have a crying man at home. Zhou Niantong never thought of giving up. But to be honest, it's really difficult for a baby to save themselves from the brink of death. In fact, upon careful consideration, in the original work, the southern emperor Duan Zhixing was indeed softened by Yinggu's pleading and had already begun to take action to save people. Just when I was unpacking Zhou Niantong's clothes, I saw that belly bag, and as a result, jealousy rose and I couldn't save it. If I didn't wear that belly bag, might I have saved my life? It's just that kind of situation can only be considered as lying flat under helplessness. Unless absolutely necessary, Zhou Niantong absolutely doesn't want to go that far. Firstly, in this case, Qiu Qianren's 2 palms must have been dealt with. Are the 2 palms of a master at the 5 Ju level easy to hit? Furthermore, if the southern emperor were to use his 1 young finger to save himself, he would surely lose all his martial arts skills. After that, Qiu Qianren will attack again. Who will resist? Isn't this equivalent to indirectly harming the life of the southern emperor? The southern emperor can be considered a rare good person no matter what he says. Will killing him not hurt his conscience? So, if possible, Zhou Niantong still hopes to directly avoid being slapped and eliminate all dangers in the bud. Just, what should we do? What can he do as a baby? Chapter 4. Duan Zhixing and Yinggu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. That night, Yinggu went to fetch water to wash herself, leaving Zhou Niantong sitting alone on the bed, frowning and pondering. Despite having a headache, Zhou Niantong couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He suddenly felt something unusual at the entrance and looked up to see a figure standing at the entrance of the dormitory. Oh my God! Is Qiu Qianren here? Zhou Niantong was so scared that his heart almost stopped, his head swelled, and he was about to lie down in the dark. Wait, I remember the original work said that Qiu Qianren had a short stature, but that figure was slightly taller than the average person. It shouldn't be. Don't panic, don't panic. The person slowly entered the room and, by the candlelight, Zhou Niantong carefully examined it. However, he saw that the person was dressed in yellow clothes, had a handsome appearance, a calm demeanor, and had 3 strands of long beard. He was about middle-aged. At this moment, he was staring at Zhou Niantong with mixed emotions in his eyes, as if sad, as if angry, and with a hint of doubt and curiosity, but without any killing intent. A flash of inspiration flashed in Zhou Niantong's mind. Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing. It must be him. I guess so. How many men can there be in this palace? Looking at this elegant and luxurious demeanor, who else could it be if it weren't the Southern Emperor? I don't know if I'm here to find my mother Yinggu, but this is a great opportunity. Zhou Niantong had considered meeting with the Southern Emperor and building a good relationship before, so that things might have a turning point. The problem is that I can't see it. My mother Yinggu is currently very afraid of meeting the Southern Emperor because she feels too embarrassed. The Southern Emperor, I remember in the original work, said that he knew about Zhou Niantong's birth and suffered a serious illness due to heartbreak. Later, he also evaded and forced himself not to think about Yinggu. What can Zhou Niantong do for a baby? Unexpectedly, it took no effort to obtain it, and the heavens actually brought the Southern Emperor in front of him. When the opportunity came, he must seize it. Zhou Niantong immediately revealed his sweet and perfect smile, which he had practiced hard for a long time. Come on, take a look at the smiling face of this innocent baby. Even the most malicious person in your heart must be moved a bit. Prince Duan, please give me some good impression. I have never laughed so much in front of my mother before. The effect should be quite good. Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing's gaze towards Zhou Niantong softened a bit, but that was clearly not enough. I am reluctant to let go of children and wolves, and I am willing to cut myself and dare to pull the emperor off his horse anyway, that's about it. Zhou Niantong pursed his lips, wanting to bite his teeth, but they haven't grown yet, so there are no teeth to bite, and crawled towards the direction of the Southern Emperor. He was not far from the bedside originally, so he didn't climb 2 steps before coming to the bedside. Then, with a firm heart, he pounced forward. Although the bed is not very high, it is certain that if you fall on this end, you will lose your appearance. Maybe even your nose can be flattened. A figure flashed by, and Zhou Niantong, whose face was almost about to have intimate contact with the ground, was held in the arms of the person who came, avoiding the fate of a flat person. Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing was a bit confused. More than half a year ago, he couldn't control his longing in his heart. In the middle of the night, he wanted to see concubine Ying, but unexpectedly saw her giving birth. The blow was too great, causing him to stand in the snow all night and then fall ill the next day, recuperating for over half a year. As soon as the illness subsided, he was afraid of being immersed in heartache again, so he had to deal with national affairs day and night to distract his attention. He had been dealing with national affairs for a tiring day, and after finishing dinner, it was already night. Thinking of taking a walk in the palace to express his increasingly gloomy mood in recent days, he unknowingly walked to Empress Ying. No, it was Empress Ying's dormitory. No wonder, after all, this is the woman he once loved the most. Although that incident made him focus on national affairs and force himself not to see her, he still habitually walked this way unintentionally. With a bitter smile and a shake of his head, Duan Zhixing let out a long sigh and turned to prepare to go back. Who knew that at this moment, a sigh also came from the dormitory? Duan Zhixing has profound skills, and although his sighs are not loud, they can still be heard clearly. Strangely enough, the voice was incredibly childish, like that of a baby. Yinggu's child. How could this baby sigh? Curiosity led Duan Zhixing into the dormitory, but fortunately he didn't hear Yinggu's breathing, so he didn't feel embarrassed to meet. Perhaps he went to fetch water to prepare for washing up. Duan Zhixing plans to take a look at that baby, just take a glance, and then leave. As a result, when he entered the room, he saw the baby. Although she was young, the faces of cool Xiao Yinggu and Zhou Batong still made Duan Zhixing lose focus for a while. Thinking of those two people made him feel sad and jealous. The child smiled when he saw him, his smile was very cute, which made his heart, which was burning with jealousy, feel a burst of love at the moment. The child, not knowing if he was close to him, crawled towards him and stumbled, falling under the bed. Duan Zhixing didn't have time to think much and used his lightness skills to dodge to the bedside, just in time to catch the child. Duan Zhixing said, "Who am I? Where am I? What am I going to do?" He was also a bit confused. Even though he just wanted to come over and take a look, why did he hold the child in his arms now? He lowered his head to look at the baby, who seemed completely unaware that he almost fell. He was lying comfortably in his arms, laughing at himself, and babbling as he reached out his little hand to reach his beard. Zhou Niantong. Black history. I have sacrificed a lot, right? This cute selling makes me almost vomit myself. Duan Zhixing couldn't help but feel a surge of love and teased the child's face with his fingers, saying, "Wow, I dare not be so mischievous anymore. I almost fell." At this moment, only the clanging sound of metal landing could be heard from the door. Duan Zhixing looked up and saw Yinggu standing there with a pale face, her hair gently twisted and slightly dripping with water, clearly just finished washing. She stared at herself in a daze, with a copper basin spinning on the ground at her feet. Yinggu. Duan Zhixing was also stunned. For a moment, 1,000 words surged into his heart, and he didn't know what to say. But seeing Yinggu's face turn pale and trembling all over, she suddenly knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly, "I beg the emperor for mercy, be merciful, and spare the child." Duan Zhixing was stunned and said, Yinggu saw that he had not responded and cried again, "Your Highness, I should die 1,000 times for my lowly concubine's crime, but I beg your Highness to pardon the child's life." Duan Zhixing couldn't figure it out, and Yinggu said again, "I have no complaints about the death bestowed upon me by the emperor. This child. She cried so hard that she choked up. Duan Zhixing was even more surprised and asked, "Who wants to give you death? What's wrong with this child?" Yinggu lifted her head and trembled as she said, "The emperor came over, isn't he here to kill this child?" Duan Zhixing finally realized and couldn't help but smile bitterly, saying, "How could this be? After all, this child is the flesh and blood of you and brother Batong at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. He felt a pain in his heart, but still gritted his teeth and said, "Although I was reckless, how could I?" "Ah, so." Yinggu said these words, feeling relieved as she fainted to the ground. This. Duan Zhixing and Zhou Niantong in his arms, the two big men, immediately looked at each other, speechless. Duan Zhixing lifted Yinggu up and placed her on the bed, and then placed Zhou Niantong beside her. After a while, Yinggu woke up leisurely and held Zhou Niantong tightly in her arms, bowing her head and not daring to look at Duan Zhixing. Duan Zhixing looked at Yinggu with a complex and changing expression. After a long sigh, he whispered, "Yinggu, maybe we should have a good talk. Zhou Niantong is such a well-behaved person. He naturally knows that this is a good time to untie the knot between his mother and the Southern Emperor. He still doesn't want to make electric light bubbles himself. It seems a bit wrong. Anyway, is he a baby?" He immediately closed his eyes, slowed down his breathing, smiled at the corners of his mouth, and looked like a good baby sleeping. He did have the intention to eavesdrop on a few words, but unfortunately, there was an awkward silence between Yinggu and the Southern Emperor. The time was quite long, so long that he waited until he really fell asleep. As a result, did the two of them really talk later on? He didn't even hear what they were talking about. When Zhou Niantong woke up the next day, he saw the old lady Yinggu cleaning up the house, humming a song in her mouth, smiling in her eyes, and looking relaxed. Yinggu saw Zhou Niantong wake up and reached out to pick him up. She gave him a heavy kiss and said, "Good boy, let's live outside with your mother." Zhou Niantong looked bewildered and said, "Mom, what consensus have you reached? Can you tell me? Chapter 5. Leaving the Dali Palace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, silently and without any ceremony, Yinggu left the palace with Zhou Niantong and settled in a small village called Liuzhuang outside the imperial city, as if life in the palace was like a dream. She didn't bring much luggage, only changed clothes and some personal money, leaving behind all the precious rewards she had received in the palace. However, she couldn't bear to part with them at all, and instead felt relieved and reborn. There was also a young palace maid brought out from the palace, aged 13 or 14, with a beautiful appearance, a petite figure, and a naive and romantic personality. Zhou Niantong still recognized her, which he had just seen when he was able to recognize people, but he hadn't seen her in the past few months. She was Green Ring, the close mate of Yinggu when she was a noble consort. She was innocent and well-behaved, and had always gotten along well with Yinggu. However, later on, Yinggu had a scene with an old mischievous child. Although the news was suppressed and did not spread, the southern emperor, who was originally very fond of Yinggu, never came to her palace again, which caused a lot of discussion. In addition, as Yinggu gave birth to a child later on, rumors spread everywhere, and some thoughtful people couldn't sit still. Although they didn't dare to reduce their food, clothing, and expenses, it was inevitable that some people would neglect them. Afterwards, she randomly assigned Green Ring to do some tasks outside of her duties, but did not see anyone in charge. In the end, she was simply transferred to the laundry room. Since then, Zhou Niantong has not seen Green Ring, and some trivial matters can only be handled by Yinggu herself. Fortunately, leaving the palace now, Yinggu passed through the southern emperor and brought the Green Ring over, which can be considered as leaving the large dyeing vat in the palace together. Additionally, Zhou Niantong estimated that those kind-hearted people wouldn't be able to please him back then, but it's none of his business. 2 women and a baby settled down in a place called Liuzhuang, and half of their wealth was used to buy the small courtyard they lived in. I wonder how long they can live with the remaining money and food. Zhou Niantong is very worried about this. But it didn't take him long to figure it out. Is livelihood something that a baby should worry about? Of course, the old lady made up her mind. It's impossible to starve to death anyway. After all, the southern emperor Duan Zhixing wouldn't ignore it. Zhou Niantong believes that his current situation is fully justified as a rice worm. Actually, looking back on the past few days, Zhou Niantong would find it unbelievable. How could the 2 of them have moved out of the palace so smoothly? You should know, this means that the sword of Damocles, which had been hanging on Zhou Niantong's forehead all along, was directly taken away by someone. Leaving this palace, Zhou Niantong and Yinggu are just an ordinary mother and son in the kingdom of Dali. They will not be mistaken for the prince of the southern emperor. Zhou will never have to worry again. One night, he will be seriously injured by a man in black and stabbed to death by the old lady with a dagger. The crisis of premature death, which left him pondering for half a year without any solution, disappeared so easily that Zhou Niantong sometimes even doubted whether he was still in his dream, recalling what he had done that night. Isn't it just a coincidence that I met the southern emperor Duan Zhixing? Isn't it just risking his face to be flattened and jumping forward, luring the southern emperor to rush in and catch him? Isn't it just pretending to sleep when it's time to do so, even though I actually fell asleep later on? So, the crisis of one's own life dissipated. Zhou Niantong couldn't help but feel a sense of absurdity, similar to accidentally extinguishing the fuse of explosives that could blow the city up to the sky by urinating. This feeling was so real that the pressure on Zhou Niantong's heart did not immediately dissipate, or perhaps he became accustomed to it naturally. In short, the drama of crying in the middle of the night did not stop immediately, and he continued to post Emperor, Emperor, Earth, Emperor outside his house wall for more than a month. In short, Zhou Niantong can finally enjoy the life of an ordinary traveler. His daily routine is to eat, sleep, sell cute, sell cute, sell cute. Not being cute is not enough. Apart from him, there are only 2 women in the family who revolve around him all day long. Helpless Zhou Niantong could only grin and show off to the 2 women all day long, feeling like his mouth was almost no longer his. Of course, it's impossible for 2 women to spend all their time with him, so they have to plan for a living. So Zhou Niantong also saw many other scenes, such as Yinggu learning cooking from Green Ring, Yinggu learning sewing and embroidery from Green Ring, Yinggu learning to do other household chores from Green Ring. Zhou Niantong. He dares to say that before I entered the palace, I was definitely not a typical lady from a wealthy family. How could there be such a lady who knows nothing like this? One night, while listening to the conversation between the 2 women, I even heard some dark history, such as the brocade handkerchief used as a token of love when Yinggu and her father Zhou Batong got along, which was still a pattern that Yinggu begged Green Ring to help embroider. How dare you believe that the love token was actually manufactured by someone else without being tampered with? Zhou Niantong suddenly felt that my mother and father Zhou Batong were really more compatible. It is worth mentioning that on the day of settling down, Aunt Yinggu called Duan into the room, returned her personal deed directly to Duan, and went to www.zhaosuiyuan.com to say that, in the future, they will be called sisters. Then there was a touching drama of gratitude and crying. Zhou Niantong also had a little aunt who gave him a headache. It's said to give him a headache, mainly because Green Ring is constantly coveting his face, not to mention kissing and hugging him on weekdays. Sometimes when my mother goes out, Green Ring is even more reckless, taking the time to come and kiss him even when she's cooking. Can this be considered ex-harassment? Speaking of this inexplicable relative, we also need to talk about those already existing relatives. A few days after moving to this village, Yinggu took Zhou Niantong back to her mother's house. Zhou Niantong's grandfather was originally a small official in the Dali kingdom, responsible for managing the library. He was honest and hardworking, with no future or danger. He lived a peaceful life. Unfortunately, as the saying goes, once you enter the palace, it's as deep as the sea. Not long after Yinggu entered the palace, her parents fell ill and passed away one after another, so she didn't have the opportunity to go home and fulfill her filial piety. There were only 2 older brothers left in the family, both of whom were originally petty officials. With the status of Empress Yinggu, they were able to obtain official positions, but they were also the same size as sesame and mung beans. Although the southern emperor was strict in governing the country, most of his relatives needed to hold their tails and be good people. However, if Yinggu had not engaged in such matters and the noble consort continued to do so, it is estimated that her 2 brothers would still be able to advance a few ranks in official positions. Just now, so during the days when Yinggu and Zhou Niantong went home to stay, although the 2 uncles looked ugly and managed to maintain their politeness, they just Yinggu didn't mind either. She silently kowtowed to her parents' graves and guarded them for a few days. She also tidied up some of her parents' belongings and everyday items from her teenage years, and then took Zhou Niantong back to Liuzhuang. Zhou Niantong estimated that there might not be much interaction with his 2 uncles in the future. Chapter 6. Xiu Zero Ren's collision with an iron plate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, as the saying goes, time flies like an arrow. Let's not say cliché as, anyway, a few years have just passed. Zhou Niantong has finally successfully evolved from a baby to a young child and is striving towards the next evolutionary goal of being a teenager. When Zhou Niantong finally spoke, he was so excited. For a year in a row, from waking up in the morning to going to bed at night, my mouth chattered incessantly. If it weren't for my mother's control, Zhou Niantong probably would have a tendency to develop into a chatterbox in recent years. The family's situation has not reached the embarrassing level that Zhou Niantong had originally anticipated. It is not relying on the assistance from the palace, but on the efforts of the mother and aunt themselves. If I had to say that my mother's intelligence was really impressive, I haven't been learning from Aunt Green Ring for long, and the embroidery skills have been increasing. Currently, the sales of the two women's works in the market are not generally good. There are also chickens and vegetables raised in a small courtyard, and as soon as you enter, a rural atmosphere fills your face. I just watched as my mother Yinggu's delicate jade hands gradually became rough, which made Zhou Niantong quite distressed. Fortunately, her spirit and energy were rising day by day, her eyes were bright, and her spirit was full. Obviously, she was very satisfied with her self-sufficient life now. Especially when politely refusing to receive money and food from the palace. Yinggu resumed practicing martial arts in her spare time. Every day, she would dance when she heard a chicken, her clothes would fly in the small courtyard, and her sword light would shine. Her palm wind would be lively and lively. At this moment, Zhou Niantong would definitely sit at the door cheering for the old lady, slapping her in the air and shouting incessantly. Why? Of course, in order to increase my mother's interest in practicing martial arts through encouragement, there are great benefits. Speaking of which, it can enhance self-protection ability. After all, two weak women with a child are considered by outsiders to be the kind of mermaid-like characters, and there is still danger. Stay away, my mother has higher martial arts skills. It will be more convenient to lay a foundation for herself in a few years, right? As for the farthest one, if I practice hard now, who can prove that I can't covet the status of the 5 wonders in the future? In The Legend of the Condor Heroes, apart from those who are naturally gifted with unique talents, who else have strong martial arts talents? My own father, the mischievous old boy Zhou Niantong can be counted as one, and the protagonist Guojing in Wuxia can also be counted as one. Although this person may seem intellectually disabled, in fact, his martial arts aptitude is relatively poor. In fact, both his foundation and intelligence are top-notch. The female protagonist Huang Rong has unparalleled talent, but unfortunately, she has too much thought and is not diligent in practicing martial arts. Her martial arts have never reached the level of the 5 wonders, which is a pity. In addition, Zhou Niantong believes that my mother Yinggu is definitely a buried martial arts genius. She wanted to enter the palace as a young girl. When she first encountered martial arts, she was already the noble consort of the Southern Emperor, which means she actually started learning martial arts after getting married as an adult. I learned a little bit from the Southern Emperor and then a little from Zhou Niantong, nothing more. My mother Yinggu only has this little way to learn martial arts, this little content, and this little foundation. Then the plot begins, and Yinggu first meets Wuxia in the middle of the condor shooting period. Although her strength is not strong enough, her moves are superior, and she almost drew. You should know that at this time, Guojing is already able to support dozens of moves against Zhou Qianren, who is at the level of the 5 wonders, without falling behind. Later, when Yinggu went to kill Master Duan Zhixing eating for revenge, she faced a 4-person battle of fishermen, woodcutters, cultivators, and readers, and easily won. Later on, she discovered that Zhou Qianren was the culprit. Instead of working hard, she forced Zhou Qianren into a state of embarrassment. If it were for an ordinary first-class expert like Zhou Chuji, even if he wanted to die with Zhou Qianren, could he? I was sent away with just 1 palm. Zhou Chuji. Shameful, the worst time in my life that an old Taoist has been blacked out. Simply put, Yinggu, who appeared in The Legend of the Condor Heroes, has reached a very high level of martial arts. However, unfortunately, due to her weak foundation, she did not have a master or top martial arts teacher to teach her. In addition, she is too old. Although she has also created unique skills such as Mud Loach skill and Coldine Arrow, her strength has finally reached a bottleneck and cannot be further improved. There is no way to make up for this basic aspect, but Zhou Niantong pondered that if I had started focusing on practicing martial arts 2 years earlier and then found a famous teacher to guide and learn some powerful skills in recent years, the kingdom of Dali has been doing well, with good weather and no major events happening internationally. It's just that, the envoys sent by the Jin state to the Song state humiliated the Song state in person, and, the envoys sent by the Song state to the Jin state were humiliated and cried again. The people of the Song state themselves don't care about this, let alone the people of Dali state. When Zhou Niantong was almost 3 years old, one day his aunt, Duan, returned from buying groceries and happily agreed with them. A big event happened in the Dali palace and an assassin came. It is said that it was one night when the esteemed crown prince of Dali had just finished his qi training and was preparing to go to bed when suddenly the window opened and a small masked black-clothed man burst in, slapping him hard in the chest. His Highness the Crown Prince was caught off guard. Although he raised his hand to block this palm, he did not fully utilize his skills in a hurry. In addition, the assassin's high martial arts skills were rare in his life, and he was injured and vomited blood on the spot with just one strike. Fortunately, His Highness the Crown Prince has also been practicing the royal martial arts of Dali for more than 10 years, with high martial arts skills. He dragged his injured body to deal with the enemy, and after more than 10 moves, he finally had a startled imperial guard come to escort him. So let the assassins see for a while, their royal guards are not vegetarians. More than 20 skilled guards surrounded the assassin, causing him to be engulfed in a sea of people's war. The assassin immediately struck heavily, although he successively repelled and injured 14 or 15 guards, he himself also received 1 finger, 2 punches, 3 palms, and 4 feet, and even blood sprayed out of his mouth. The assassin saw the situation was not good, and then he elbowed his stomach and pushed 3 times, forcing everyone around him to break free from the beating. He flew up the palace wall and laughed 3 times with his hands behind his back, his voice extremely old and majestic. Guard Jia, nicknamed Tian Shuang Fist, said, "Everyone stop first. The other party is about to speak. According to the rules of the martial arts world, my son cannot take action at this time." Guard B, nicknamed Paiyun Pom, said, yes, first listen to what the other party wants to say. Go to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and I guess it's some old slang in the martial arts world. The green mountains don't change, and the green water flows for a long time. Guard C, nicknamed Divine Wind Leg, said, I'm so excited, I feel like I'm wandering the world. The guard Ding, nicknamed San Fengui Yuan Chi, said, it's just that my martial arts have a cost and I want to venture into the martial arts world to gain some experience. But my father sent me to the palace as a guard on behalf of me. It's boring to be on duty every day, Jian Mao Sha. Finally, there will be a lot of excitement from the martial arts world to watch. So the guards below all looked up together. But as the assassin took a deep breath and was about to speak, he accidentally caused an injury. Suddenly, he coughed incessantly, and it became increasingly intense, making it uncontrollable. The guard said, Damn it, play with us. Brothers, deal with him. Damn it. Dark Qingzi, hello. Suddenly, the sleeve sword, money dart, flying sword, locust stone and locust swarmed away, causing the assassin to scream in fear. His legs swung up like a windmill, and a few dodged and ran away, leaving only the guards exclaiming, good lightness skill. After the investigation, a total of 11 people, including the crown prince, were injured. Fortunately, none of them were too serious, and everyone agreed that the assassin's injuries were much heavier than theirs. Auntie Green Ring was there vividly describing the scene at that time. My mother Yinggu occasionally covered her mouth and exclaimed in surprise, while Zhou Niantong lazily leaned against my mother's embrace, with a mischievous smile on the corner of her mouth. That's it. Qiu Qianren, you are someone who kills 1,000 knives. I have already left the palace, young master. Do you still want to use your strategy of borrowing a knife to kill? By the way, you don't have any other options, do you? Alright now, I bumped into the iron plate of His Highness the Crown Prince. Old Qiu, how does it taste? Chapter 7. Entering the Palace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Zhou Niantong is 5 years old. On this day, he finally succeeded in becoming the child king in Liuzhuang. There were a total of 93 children aged 3 to 10 in the village, all under his command. It's not easy. As a 5-year-old child, it's not easy to suppress so many older children and make them obedient. Naturally, it can still be achieved with a mind far beyond age. The most important thing is that he has many game methods to teach others. Chess, military flag, flying chess, these belong to the advanced brain action type, and they are the ones to deal with those older children. Jumping house, jumping rubber bands, materials are really hard to find, flipping flower ropes, kicking shuttlecock and throwing sandbags, it's a girl-exclusive game that is highly praised as soon as it's thrown. As for the smaller boys, Zhou Niantong was too lazy to teach games such as hide-and-seek, eagle and chick. After dealing with the older children, the children naturally followed suit. And he still has a big weapon in his hand that hasn't been taken out. Zhou Niantong is planning to start a small column called After Dinner Book Review, and he has all kinds of excellent classical novels at his disposal, which is perfect for practicing his tongue. Of course, Zhou Niantong is not just playing with children. During this time, he is also considering what suitable ways to make money, so as not to have his mother engage in embroidery work, which not only requires hard work but also takes up a lot of practice time. The method is not without it, after all, he has knowledge that has been ahead of the times for hundreds of years, but this way of making money was found by him as a child. How can he appear more natural and not be seen as a monster? Also, how can we guarantee that we won't be coveted or taken away? This is all something to consider. Fortunately, after thinking for so long, I have some thoughts in my mind. Let's give it a try in a while. Also, he is at least 5 years old. Can we talk to my mother and consider teaching him martial arts? After all, traveling to this world of martial arts, if you don't learn martial arts, isn't it a waste of time? Just as Zhou Niantong was thinking about finding a suitable opportunity to mention this matter to his mother, a guest arrived at home that morning. The newcomer was a scholar in his 30s, wearing a carefree scarf on his head, holding a folding fan, and nodding a strand of black beard. His face was clear and elegant, with a scholarly and elegant demeanor. No wonder the aunt who opened the door for him, green ring, blushed and dodged. This person's name is Zhu Ziliu, and he was the top scorer in the Xinhua department of the Dali kingdom. After being elected, he became a clean and upright official with outstanding political achievements. He was promoted to the rank of Prime Minister of Dali for 10 years and assisted the Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing in governing the country in an orderly manner. Although the administration of Dali Elementary School is simple, it also indicates that this person is indeed capable. Zhou Niantong knew better that this person had another important identity, which was Duan Zhixing's disciple. He studied martial arts under him and was the first of the 4 disciples of the fisherman, woodcutter, farmer, and scholar. In recent years, although my mother Yinggu has always politely declined the money in food aid in the palace, the southern emperor would still send people to come and take a look every now and then. Although there was nothing wrong, it was reassuring. Recently, it has been mainly this prime minister who personally visited, and Zhou Niantong expressed extreme displeasure about this. There is no such thing as a reason, a scholar with a wicked heart. Zhou Niantong naturally knew that the incident between his mother Yinggu and father Zhou Badong, although not widely spread, was indeed a great scandal for the Dali royal family, especially a great insult to the southern emperor Duan Zhixing. So all 4 of his disciples were furious about it, and every time they saw my mother Yinggu, they didn't look good. But compared to the other 3 who either glared angrily or ignored, Zhu Ziliu's attitude seemed to be respectful, but in fact, it was the most heart-wrenching. But seeing the Zhu Ziliu, she bowed to the old lady Yinggu and said, "I have seen the Empress Dowager." He struggled and hesitated for a moment before changing his mind and saying, "I've seen Miss Lu." I knew it. Zhou Niantong's face remained expressionless as he roared inwardly, "How many times have this been?" As for every time you see my mother, do you always make a mistake and then change your mind? I dare say it wasn't intentional. That's right, this guy did it on purpose. Every time I come to my door, when I see my mother, I first call her wrong and then change my mind. With a painful, hesitant and struggling expression, I actually want to use this opportunity to stimulate my mother. Shrimp and pig heart, there is wood and wood. Old Lady Yinggu's reaction was also expected by Zhou Niantong. First, her face changed from red to white, and then she bowed back and spoke in a faint tone, I dare not trouble the Prime Minister to be polite. What are you doing here today? Poor old lady. Every time I get stabbed like this, I'm almost numb. Zhu Ziliu bowed again and said, As your Majesty has instructed, please ask Miss Lu to take this. Zhou Niantong silently followed Zhu Ziliu in his heart and finished the remaining words in one voice. Little Prince. Ah no, it's the little young master. I knew I couldn't escape either. What's the use of pointing your finger at me? I'm only 5 years old, can you understand the irony between the lines? Zhou Niantong was complaining in his heart, but he heard the remaining words from Zhu Ziliu. On a visit to the palace, there is something important that needs to be witnessed, and there are also important matters to discuss. Hey! Did the Southern Emperor ask them to enter the palace? I don't know what to do, it sounds like something big has happened. Yinggu hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. She changed Zhou Niantong into a more solemn outer robe and immediately followed him into the palace with Zhu Ziliu. Twisting and twisting, Zhu Ziliu led Yinggu and her son through a small door in the palace and arrived at a quiet room. The quiet room was very rudimentary, but there were a few tables, a few cattails, and not even a stool. There were several palace maids standing on the side. Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing was sitting cross-legged on a cattail, dressed in a golden dragon robe and a crown, appearing very formal. After a few years of absence, he seemed to have aged a bit, with some silver streaks on his temples and a hint of haggard expression on his face. Duan Zhixing was closing his eyes and recuperating when he heard a few footsteps. He opened his eyes and smiled slightly at Yinggu, saying, Yinggu, are you here? However, Yinggu was somewhat surprised and said, Emperor, are you? Duan Zhixing didn't answer and turned to look at Zhou Niantong with a gentle smile, Child, do you still remember me? Before Zhou Niantong could answer, he laughed and said, I'm foolish. You were not yet 1 year old when you left the palace, how could you still recognize me? Of course I do, but indeed, I should pretend not to recognize it now. So Zhou Niantong obediently bowed and said, Hello uncle, I don't recognize you, but my mother does. Is your surname Huang? Duan Zhixing's face was gentle and he said, My surname is not Huang, but Duan. I am the Emperor of Dali. I called you and your mother today to witness some things and discuss some things. Zhou Niantong was about to ask when an impatient voice came from beside him. Duan Huangya, what exactly do you want to do? You still have the heart to talk to children. My legs are sore from crying so much. Zhou Niantong was taken aback and turned his head to see a middle-aged beggar sitting on a cattail in the corner, with his legs outstretched and unrestrained. This beggar has a rectangular face, a slightly bearded chin, thick hands and big feet, and although his clothes are relatively clean, they are covered in patches. He held a jade-green bamboo stick in his right hand and a large wine gourd in his left hand, sipping small drinks without stopping. Although everyone's gaze was on him at this moment, he seemed carefree and unrestrained. The most eye-catching thing for Zhou Niantong was the missing index finger on his right hand holding a bamboo stick. Old beggar. That green bamboo stick, and the right hand with a missing index finger, my goodness, Hong Qigong from the North beggar. Oh my God, the person that Zhou Niantong admires the most among the 5 wonders is this person. Martial arts are second, and the key is that this person can be regarded as the top-ranked great educator in Jin Yong's works. The ability to turn the incompetent Guodaxia into one of the new 5 wonders of the future, the Northern Xia, is simply amazing. Moreover, this person is also known as the #1 gourmet, eating all over the country, from the royal imperial dining room to the rural stir-fry, there is no delicious food that he has never tasted. That tongue is also powerful. Huan Rong can distinguish the meat strips made from a mixture of 5 types of meat with just one bite. This skill, TSK, if mixed with modern times, all those foodies will lose their jobs. As for character, it goes without saying that in the original work of Mr. Jin Yong, it is written in black and white that among the 5 wonders, Wang Chongyang, who passed away early, ranks first. Chapter 8. The Abdication of the Southern Emperor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, not to mention that Zhou Niantong was looking at Hong Qigong with a worshipful gaze at the moment. Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing smiled slightly and said, 7 brothers, please be calm and not impatient. Let's be a witness here. What are you witnessing, really? You haven't told me yet, what is the reason for the great loss of your martial arts? Hong Qigong muttered, but he didn't speak anymore. Duan Zhixing made a wait gesture to the crowd, then slowly got up, pushed open a hidden small door, and walked out with Zhu Ziliu, who had changed into official clothes at an unknown time. The small door seemed to have been intentionally left open. Looking out from the door, one could see a magnificent scene, with several huge pillars supporting a large hall. The civil and military officials stood in 2 rows, with a red carpet on the ground. A platform about 1 meter high was set up at the front, and a dragon chair was placed. But Duan Zhixing slowly walked up the stairs to the high platform, walked to the dragon chair, and sat down. Zhu Ziliu walked to the left row of officials and stood in the second position. Then, a sharp voice shouted, "Go to court." But a small eunuch stood by the side of the dragon chair, and then all the civil and military officials bowed together, saying, "Long live. Be good." So that's the Golden One Hall of the Imperial Palace. The civil and military officials of the Southern Emperor and the Kingdom of Dali attend court meetings here every day to handle national affairs. Zhou Niantong suddenly felt an excitement of witnessing history, and his whole body leaned over, curious and looking around. The small door was located behind the side of the dragon chair, facing 2 rows of respectful officials. Zhou Niantong's attention was focused on Zhu Ziliu, but he stood only in the second position. In front of him was a young man in his 20s, covering most of his figure. Strange, isn't Zhu Ziliu the prime minister and the largest civil servant? Why not stand first? The young man had a clear and handsome face, a calm demeanor, wearing a yellow robe and a golden crown. His appearance was somewhat similar to that of the Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing. When Zhou Niantong poked his head and looked around, he happened to stand up straight after the official salute, and the young man saw Zhou Niantong at a glance. He was no different, just smiling slightly at Zhou Niantong, his expression seeming somewhat approachable. Zhou Niantong himself was quite frightened, feeling a sense of guilt as if he had accidentally stumbled upon the Hollywood blockbuster filming site. He quickly turned his head back, only to find a black shadow above his head. Looking up, he saw the North beggar Hong Qigong in the same position as him, stretching his head around the small door and muttering, "Hee, this time Lao Jiaohua has opened her eyes." So this is the scene of the emperor going to court. Not bad, it's quite impressive. Why is the North beggar, one of the 5 wonders, like a newly arrived rural person now? This doesn't match the demeanor of your master. Zhou Niantong secretly roused, but he also felt that Hong Qigong's appearance had dissipated the aura of his top master and made him closer. "Uncle, have you never been to the palace before?" "I have been in the Grand Song Palace in Linen a few times, and the food in the imperial dining room over there is really delicious. But I have never ventured into the Golden One Palace before. I think the Golden One Palace in Linen should be a bit more imposing than here." Hong Qigong took a sip of wine and said with a smile. "Dal, who are you from Prince Duan? I thought you were one of his princes, but now it doesn't seem like you are anymore." "Well, if you really want to say something, it's complicated. I have to say that my mother used to be his noble consort, do you believe it? However, Zhou Niantong couldn't possibly say this. I don't know either, but I know that this emperor uncle knows my mother and also knows me. Aha, you can tell. The two of them watched and chatted as if there was no one around. It's really strange. What exactly does this prince want to do? Let's see him go to court to handle national affairs. As soon as Hong Qigong muttered in confusion, he saw the southern emperor standing up in the Golden One Hall, who had already dealt with the matter. Dear esteemed officials, it has been 30 years since I took over as the Grand Treasurer in the first year of Zili Zhen. Although I have been unworthy in governing the country for these 30 years, I dare not say anything about my achievements, but I dare not slack off for a moment. I am really tired. The words of the southern emperor immediately caused the courtiers below to be shocked, and they didn't care about the rules at the court meeting, whispering in unison. Therefore, if we want to emulate our ancestors and practice Zen as the crown prince and shave our heads as a monk, do you have any objections to this? The southern emperor ignored the buzzing below and raised his voice to speak the following words. Strangely speaking, the surprised expressions on the faces of the ministers before made Zhou Niantong think that there must be a few who jumped out to express opposition, but to his surprise, it was quiet. The ministers lowered their heads, looked at their noses, and hearts, and didn't say a word. He didn't know that the ruler of Dali could be considered a legendary figure in his ancestors. The tradition of the king becoming a monk had already formed, and he had long been accustomed to it. Besides, other emperors have said they want to emulate their ancestors, which is filial piety. Filial piety is the top of all virtues. Can you stop their filial piety? Drooling can kill you. Maybe, these ghostly guys have already received news and are mentally prepared. These surprised expressions may have been made to pretend after waiting for a while. The southern emperor saw that there was no objection below and continued, since that's the case, my wise and honest son, come forward. The young man Zhou Niantong saw before bowed his head and said, obey, then slowly walked up the stairs to the high platform where the dragon chair was located. That person turned out to be Crown Prince Duan. Zhou Niantong finally knew why he stood first this time. It turned out to be His Highness the Crown Prince. Well, it's the one who was ambushed by Qiu Qianren 2 years ago. I remember his martial arts were excellent, and even if he was injured, he could still fight with Qiu Qianren for quite some time. Zhou Niantong couldn't bear to watch the succession ceremony afterwards. He turned around and walked to his mother Yinggu, holding her hand. Mom, look for the Emperor Uncle from Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. He said he's going to meditate and also needs to shave his head to become a monk. Ah. Since entering this room and seeing the southern Emperor Duan Zhixing, Yinggu has been bowing her head and keeping silent. She was afraid that she had never heard of what would happen next. Her son held hands and woke her up. The Emperor wants to abdicate and become a monk. What should we do? Can we persuade him to change his mind? Hong Qigong, who was still watching over there, interjected, it can't be changed. It has already been announced at the court meeting. As the Emperor's golden words in jade, how can we go back and forth? Now that the succession ceremony is underway. Speaking of which, Hong Qigong also exclaimed, I really didn't expect that today. I have gained a lot of knowledge. No wonder I was asked to come over as a witness. Why can't the Emperor think about this and insist on avoiding his position and becoming a monk? He frowned and thought for a moment before muttering to himself, previously, my martial arts suffered a great loss, and I insisted on passing on my innate skills in one young finger. Now, I have become a monk. Has this section of the Emperor seen through the world? Shouldn't he not even plan to participate in the second Huashan sword debate? Upon hearing these words, Yinggu became even more disoriented and said, the Emperor has seen through the world. What should we do? Can you advise him to read through the child's mind? I advised him. I'm not familiar with him. Zhou Niantong knew that at this moment, the old lady must have blamed herself for the reason why the southern emperor wanted to become a monk. She felt guilty about it, and perhaps even a bit panicked. After the ceremony ended, Duan Zhixing returned here, and maybe Yinggu would still want to hide. However, Yinggu thought too much. The incident between her and her father Zhou Batong may have been a trigger, but it definitely wouldn't have been the main reason. Otherwise, Duan Zhixing would have become a monk a few years ago. How could he have waited until today? Zhou Niantong didn't know how to appease his mother, so he could only hold her hand tightly, and it took her a long time to gradually calm down. Chapter 9. The Birth of the Lamp Master. Applause. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Time passed quickly by noon, and the ceremony was still taking place. The palace maids brought meals, but the old lady was too preoccupied to eat and only took 2 bites. Zhou Niantong was too young to eat much, but Hong Qigong had an excellent appetite. After finishing his meal thoroughly, he even patted his stomach and said, "Not bad. Not bad." The succession ceremony did not end until late afternoon, due to the simplicity of the Dali elementary school. If it were in the Song dynasty, it would probably take several days. Southern Emperor, no, this can only be said that Emperor Duan Zhixing of Dali has returned to that small room and is going to hold a shaving ceremony. This is a private matter, of course it cannot be done on the Golden Yuan Palace. Otherwise, let the ministers watch the emperor shave his head over there. Not many people witnessed Duan Zhixing's shaving, including the new emperor, Duan Zhixing's 4 major disciples, and the original few people in the room. The old monk who shaved Duan Zhixing's head is said to be a master practitioner in the Tianlong Temple, a royal temple in Dali. He is still of the same race as Duan Zhixing. Yinggu tried to stop her but dared not speak up. She watched as Duan Zhixing's hair gradually faded and she looked uncomfortable. In no time, after shaving, he put on a monk's robe, and Duan Zhixing was granted the Dharma name, One Lamp. One of the main characters in The Legend of the Condor Heroes and The Legend of the Condor Heroes, the One Lamp Master, appeared before his eyes. Zhou Niantong's eyes were full of novelty, and this feeling of witnessing history was truly rare. He didn't feel like his mother couldn't bear it in her heart. After all, it was fate in the plot. It doesn't feel strange that the Southern Emperor didn't become a master of one lamp. Besides, no matter what the reason is, at least the plot has changed. Now, when Master Eating shaves, he is definitely not as heartbroken as in the original work. Isn't that enough? Master Eating thanked the old monk, clasped his hands together, and verbally proclaimed the Buddha's name to Hong Qigong. 7 brothers, thank you very much for coming to observe the ceremony today. Hong Qigong waved his hand casually and said, we can also be considered as established friendships. You don't need to be too polite. Now that things are over, tell me why a good emperor doesn't want to work anymore and wants to become a monk. What's wrong with your great loss of skills? Eating smiled and said, the matter is not over yet. There is one more thing that 7 brother needs to witness. However, it's not urgent. You can first explain the reason for my shaving this time. Oh. Originally, since the crown prince was assassinated 2 years ago, Southern Emperor Duan Zhixing has been interested in this matter. The state of Dali is weak and advocates Buddhism. There are very few cases of power struggles within the royal family. Such incidents of openly invading the imperial palace and assassinating the crown prince have not occurred for hundreds of years since the founding of the country. Besides, the assassin's martial arts are extremely high, almost equivalent to his own. Is it an ordinary force that can hire such an assassin? Duan Zhixing pondered and sent someone to investigate, but could not find the culprit. Gradually, he suspected that the real target of the killer was not actually the crown prince. The crown prince's private words with him also confirmed this point. On the same day, he was suddenly attacked, and the crown prince was not lightly injured. If the assassin used the same force and slapped him a few more times, he might not be able to take a few moves and his life would be in danger. But strangely, after the assassin's attack, he regained a lot of strength, seemingly afraid that he would die, just hoping to add a few more palms to make him seriously injured. The assassin was unaware that the Duan family had a gentle and introverted internal skill, which was extremely good at treating internal injuries. His lighter attack not only did not worsen the crown prince's internal injuries, but also allowed him to breathe a sigh of relief and deal with the enemy. After more than a dozen moves, the internal injuries did not worsen, but instead eased a bit while secretly using the internal skill. The result was that the guards came to assist, giving the assassin an unforgettable lesson for life. Upon learning this from the crown prince, Duan Zhixing immediately thought of his family's one-yang finger, which, in conjunction with Wang Chongyang's innate skill, was not the most effective in treating internal injuries. Could it be that the assassin's target is himself, hoping to injure the crown prince and force himself to heal him, resulting in a significant loss of power? After Duan Zhixing guessed the truth, he was greatly surprised. There is no principle to defend against thieves for 1,000 days in this world. The assassin's assassination failed this time, and it is difficult to guarantee that there will not be another assassination. With so many people in the palace, how could he possibly be able to survive? Although the assassin was seriously injured this time, it is estimated that he will not have the energy to assassinate again in a few years. 2 years passed anxiously, and a few days ago, something happened again. This time he was the general manager of his imperial army. Wuxiantong was ordered to go to the Daxishan mountains in western Yunnan to work, but he met a young master who was overbearing and domineering. He blocked the way and started fighting with Wuxiantong directly. Wuxiantong was also a private disciple of Duan Zhixing, a farmer in the fields of fishing, woodcutting, farming, and studying. His martial arts were already extraordinary, and he only drew with the young master. As a result, a man from the western regions suddenly appeared next to him, and without saying a word, he severely injured Wuxiantong. The man and young master of the western regions were naturally the western poison Ouyang Feng and his nephew Ouyang Ku. Later, Wuxiantong was ordered to be carried back to the kingdom of Dali. Upon examination, Duan Zhixing knew that this was caused by the toad technique. Duan Zhixing immediately thought of Ouyang Feng's plan, which must be similar to the assassin 2 years ago. He planned to force him to suffer a significant loss of power after his injury was treated, and most likely he would take the opportunity to take his life. What should I do? If he were to save someone, Duan Zhixing would undoubtedly be powerless to take action. Originally, no one in Dali state could resist the western poison Ouyang Feng except for him, and the personnel in the royal Tianlong temple were withered. Only 1 or 2 of them had enough strength, perhaps they could resist 1 or 2 together. However, if the last assassin had also colluded with Ouyang Feng and attacked together, not only did he fear himself like that, but the entire Dali royal family was also hard to escape. But as the chief steward of the imperial guards, Wuxiantong is loyal and has made countless contributions, and he is also his own disciple. How could he not be saved? After hesitating for a long time, seeing that Wuxiantong was seriously injured and about to die, he had no choice but to save the person first. Therefore, Duan Zhixing, who appeared in front of Zhou Niantong now, had a haggard face, but his vitality was severely damaged because he had already used his young finger to save Wuxiantong. After much consideration, Duan Zhixing eventually decided to abdicate and become a monk, hoping to avoid disputes and perhaps avoid the assassination of Ouyang Feng. Fortunately, the northern beggar Hong Qigong was chivalrous and righteous. Recently, he happened to be near the Dali kingdom, so he was invited to witness Duan Zhixing's abdication and becoming a monk. Secondly, with this expert here, at least the abdication and shaving ceremony can be safely carried out without worrying about Ouyang Feng or that assassin coming to cause trouble. I see. Hong Qigong fell silent for a moment after listening to Master Yideng's lecture. He was a kind-hearted person, and after a moment of contemplation, he said to Yideng, Lord Duan. Well, Master Yideng, I won't stay here for long. How about this? How about I escort you back to our beggar's sect as a guest? I think even though Ouyang Feng has great poison skills, he wouldn't dare to break into the main altar of our beggar's sect. Master Yiding smiled and said, Amitabha Buddha. Thank you very much for your kindness, Brother Seven. There's no need to cause trouble for the beggar's sect in this matter. Ouyang Feng couldn't escape the words fame and profit, and he spared no effort in his wrongdoing, causing countless injustices. It's truly pitiful. After this incident, I will take my disciple to find a secluded place and teach him not to find it. This. Hong Qigong advised a few words, thinking about letting a former emperor and current monk hide in a pile of beggars. It was a bit inappropriate, so he stopped talking and secretly decided that if he knew that Ouyang Feng's old poison had any bad moves against Master Yiding, he would definitely take action. Besides, before retiring, there is one more thing that Seven Brother needs to witness. What else is there? Chapter 10. Apprenticeship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, a lamp turned to Zhou Niantong and his mother Yinggu, smiling and saying, I want to take Niantong as a disciple. Yinggu, can you agree? Ah. From just now on, Yinggu, who had been stunned by a series of things, suddenly realized that she saw the bald head of a lamp and turned to look at her son. She was so scared that she immediately hugged Zhou Niantong. Emperor, it's not possible. Niantong is still young, and I hope he will have children when he grows up. We can't become monks together. Zhou Niantong. Our mother's brain circuit. I'll say it again, she's a perfect match for her father Zhou Batong. Ah. The light flickered, followed by a bitter smile. Yinggu, you misunderstood again. I want to take Niantong as my disciple to teach me what I have learned throughout my life, not to have him become a monk along with me. He pointed to the four people behind him, Zhu Ziliu, Wu Santong, and two other men, saying, they are all my disciples. They were originally the Prime Minister, General, Commander-in-Chief of the Water Army, and Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Guards of the Dali Kingdom. This time when I abdicate and become a monk, they will also resign and follow me. However, I will not let them become monks, just become secular disciples. So. Do you agree, Niantong child? Yinggu was a bit at a loss and didn't know if she should agree. She turned to ask her 5-year-old son. Zhou Niantong felt a bit dazed in a dream at this moment. He really did not think that after the life and death disaster, he has been really successful in the past few years. A while ago, I was just thinking about getting my mother to start teaching me martial arts, but pie fell from the sky. The 2 5 wonders stood in front of me, and Yiding even wanted to take him as his disciple. Can this be considered a great disaster? There must be good fortune if one does not die. Well, will you agree or not? I actually want to learn from Hong Qigong even more, after all, he is a renowned teacher. His achievements in the future can be imagined. Zhou Niantong's heart was spinning, his eyes shifting between Master Yiding and Hong Qigong. However, when it comes to learning from Hong Qigong, let's not say whether he can agree or not. Even if he agrees, which martial arts can he learn? There's no need to mention things like Xiao Yu. Second-rate martial arts have no value in learning. The dog-beating stick technique is exquisite, but only the leader of the beggar's sect can learn it. Do you want to be the beggar's head? Just thinking about it makes me panic. The 18 dragon subduing palms are indeed awe-inspiring, but this painting style can be learned by the generous and domineering Qiao Daxia, and by the great Guo Daxia, who is a hero for the country and the people. But if Zhou Nian learns it all, isn't his painting style a bit biased? In contrast, Master Yiding possesses both innate skills and a unique skill of one young finger, and his ability to teach his disciples is not bad either. Although his skills in fishing, woodcutting, farming, and reading are far inferior to the 5 wonders, he can still be considered a top-notch master in the later stage. In my own words, I believe the future is even broader. After all, Zhou Niantong is still very optimistic about his talent. Can the talent of the son of the old mischievous child and Yinggu be different? Furthermore, this lamp master is gentle and kind, which really gives people a sense of closeness. Moreover, his causal relationship with his family is indeed deeply intertwined. Okay, that's him. Thinking of this, Zhou Niantong looked up and said to his mother, "Mother, I am willing to worship the emperor uncle as my teacher." After speaking, before Yinggu could react, he knelt down in front of Master Yiding and kowtowed several times, saying, "Niantong kowtow to master." "Okay, good child, get up quickly." Master Yiding's face was full of kindness as he helped Zhou Niantong up. Yinggu hesitated for a while before feeling relieved. She certainly couldn't hate Master Yiding as much as in the original work, just because of the old mischievous child. She was afraid of getting too close to Yiding. After all, the relationship between the three of them was too complicated and awkward before. However, since it was her son's choice, that's it. The palace maid next to her brought fragrant tea and asked Zhou Niantong to serve tea to Master Yiding. This apprenticeship ceremony was considered a success. "Good child, you have suffered a lot. It should have been more serious, but now that I am a teacher, my life is in danger. I dare not let others know about our master-disciple relationship, let alone reveal it to the martial arts world. Fortunately, with Brother Seven here to witness, I finally haven't wronged you too much." "Good, good, good. Congratulations to the master for accepting the best disciple." Hong Qigong smiled and arched his hand, then asked curiously, "You haven't told me yet, what exactly is this doll's identity?" "Master, are you planning to teach him all the family's yang fingers?" Yiding smiled and said, "The yang finger is indeed passed down from my family, but there is no prohibition in the ancestral teachings against external transmission. It's just that people from my Duan family's bloodline are easier to learn, and my 4 disciples have already passed it on, so naturally they won't have any reservations about Niantong." He paused for a moment and then said, "And in my mind, it's not just the one yang finger. Wang Chongyang and his brother have passed on my innate skills, and I also plan to teach this child." "Oh." Not to mention that Zhou Niantong was filled with surprise upon hearing these words. Hong Qigong was very surprised. "Before, you came to me and said you wanted to pass on my one yang finger and congenital skill, but you refused to learn my dragon subduing 18 palms. Now you want to pass on these 2 unique skills to this doll. Is it a bit casual?" Yiding replied, "There's no way. Since you're unwilling to learn, I have to find a successor for Brother Wang's innate skills." Hong Qigong asked, "Old beggar, I am not rewarded for my meritorious service. Of course, it is not easy for me to learn your unique skills. Moreover, I originally practiced external skills, and the advanced internal skills of innate skills are not compatible with mine. I am also impatient with the kung fu on my fingers like the one yang finger. It's just that this child. But Brother Qi wants to ask if this child has an extraordinary identity, which is why he made me look at him differently." Yiding chuckled and glanced at Yinggu, who was feeling uneasy. He said, "There aren't many specific details. You also know his father, Zhou Batong." "Eh." Hong Qi looked at Zhou Niantong carefully and said, "Speaking of which, there is a hint of shadow in his eyebrows and eyes, but he is much more handsome than Batong. Speaking of how old a mischievous boy is, he has also married and had children. I really can't believe that old beggar." At this point, he was taken aback and turned to bow his hand to Yinggu, saying, "So, this is actually a younger sister. Although I haven't seen Batong many times, we are still considered brothers. Today, it's impolite. This. Actually." Yinggu responded with a flustered salute, but she was extremely embarrassed and didn't know how to explain it. Yiding said, "Some of the insider information is not easy to say, but monks don't lie. This child is indeed the flesh and blood of Batong. When Brother Wang passed on my innate skill, I originally planned to have someone to restrain Brother Ouyang after he passed away, but my temperament Disappointed Brother Wang. After hearing that Brother Wang passed away, for some unknown reason, he did not leave this divine skill in the Chuanjin sect. Since this child is the son of Batong, he is naturally a half-Chuanjin sect member. In the future, whether he has achieved success in practicing martial arts on his own, or brought his innate skills back to the Chuanjin sect, or taught Batong, it has all been my wish. Find the book Garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Only then did those present realize that master eating had put in a lot of effort, and each person had their own thoughts. For example, Yinggu was filled with mixed emotions and couldn't speak. The scene suddenly fell silent, with some indescribable awkwardness. Zhou Niantong knelt down again and kowtowed to eating, saying, although I didn't understand a bit, I knew my master must be doing me good. Niantong thanked my master. Of course, he didn't understand, but due to his childhood identity, he could only say so, and his heart was moved. Undoubtedly a master of one lamp, this demeanor, this broad-minded with a smile, eating pulled up Zhou Niantong and said, good child, don't be too polite. He then turned to Yinggu and said, originally, since I had taken this child as my disciple, I should have stayed by his side and taught him well. Unfortunately, at this moment, Ouyang Feng must be lurking around waiting to attack me. The old monk is timid, but he has to hide. Fortunately, among the 4 disciples, the other 3 were relieved of their duties, except for Zhu Ziliu, who was originally the Prime Minister of Dali and had many affairs to handle. However, he couldn't just leave at once and had to stay for a year and a half, slowly handing over the affairs to his successor. Therefore, I want Zhu Ziliu to stay, while handing over tasks and teaching me martial arts, laying a foundation for Niantong's martial arts, and also teaching him how to read and read. What do you think, Yinggu? What else can Yinggu say? She naturally nodded and agreed, but in fact, she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Otherwise, she would have been very embarrassed to constantly face a light. Hong Qigong laughed heartily and said, okay, old beggar. I'll accompany the master on a trip and find a safe place to hide. No matter how skilled his old poison is, it's impossible for him to follow behind me and make me imperceptible. Thank you, Brother 7.